Big Four Audit Delivery Center, ADC. Interview preparation. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're covering interview preparation for Big Four Audit Delivery Centers. In simple words, an audit delivery center supports core audit work such as walkthroughs, controls testing, substantive testing, analytics, and documentation for global audit teams. These questions reflect real ADC interview expectations. Let's begin. How do you perform walkthroughs and document process understanding for offshore audit engagements? Sample answer. I start by reading process descriptions and prior year work papers. Then I walk through each step with the client or onshore team, understanding key activities, controls, and systems used. I document the flow using narratives, flowcharts, and control identification. This ensures clarity before testing begins. While answering, always include understanding, documentation, and clarity. A client sends incomplete PBCs. How do you manage follow-ups and ensure timely receipt of audit evidence? Sample answer. I first identify exactly what is missing and update the PBC tracker. Then I send a clear follow-up request with the deadline and impact. If delays continue, I escalate politely to onshore. Early and structured follow-ups help avoid last-minute pressure. While answering, always include clarity, tracking, and escalation. How do you test design and operating effectiveness of internal controls using offshore audit procedures? Sample answer. For design, I verify whether the control addresses the relevant risk. I review documentation, walkthroughs, and control descriptions. For operating effectiveness, I select samples, obtain evidence, and test whether the control worked as intended. I document results clearly for reviewer decisions. While answering, always include design checks. Sample testing and documentation. A team in onshore has unclear requirements. How do you clarify audit instructions and avoid rework? Sample answer. I summarize what I understood and send a short confirmation note. I ask focused questions to remove ambiguity. Once the instructions are clear, I update the work paper and proceed. This prevents rework and improves audit quality. While answering, always include summarization, clarification, and confirmation. How do you evaluate appropriateness of audit sampling techniques? Sample answer. I understand the population and audit objective. For statistical sampling, I consider confidence levels and tolerable deviation. For non-statistical sampling, I consider risk and judgment. I choose the method that gives sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. While answering, always include objective, population, and sampling logic. End. A client provides massive datasets. How do you perform data cleansing and prepare it for audit testing? Sample answer. I check for duplicates, missing fields, and mismatched formats. I align dates, numbers, and text formats. I validate totals against the general ledger. Once clean, I use the dataset for sampling or analytics. Clean data reduces testing errors. While answering, always include cleaning, formatting, and validation. How do you perform lead sheet preparation and tie out to trial balance? Sample answer. I import the trial balance and map accounts to financial statement line items. I verify totals and ensure all accounts are included. I tie every number in the lead sheet back to the TB. This ensures completeness and accuracy. While answering, always include mapping, tie-outs, and verification. A misstatement is identified. How do you communicate and document it for onshore review? Sample answer. I calculate the impact, classify it as factual, judgmental, or projected, and document the source. I add supporting evidence and update the misstatement tracker. Then, I share the details with onshore for evaluation. Clear documentation avoids confusion later. While answering, always include classification, evidence, and tracker updates. How do you ensure audit working papers meet Big Four documentation standards? Sample answer. I follow firm templates, include purpose, procedures, and conclusions. I ensure all evidence is cross-referenced. I write clearly so another auditor can re-perform the work. Strong documentation improves audit quality and review efficiency. While answering, always include clear purpose, procedures, and cross-referencing. A team faces bottlenecks during busy season. How do you prioritize and allocate tasks effectively? Sample answer. I list tasks by urgency, audit risk, and reviewer deadlines. Critical areas like revenue or inventory go first. I allocate work based on skill level and track progress daily. This keeps the team on schedule, even during peak load. While answering, always include prioritization, allocation, and tracking. How do you test revenue using audit analytics in offshore delivery? Sample answer. I analyze trends, ratios, and unusual fluctuations. I use data analytics to identify outliers, duplicate invoices, or unusual credit notes. I compare monthly patterns to expectations. Analytics helps focus substantive testing on higher risk areas. While answering, always include trends, outliers, and pattern checks. A client uses complex ERP systems. How do you extract and validate system-generated reports? Sample answer. I request standard system reports with key filters. I test completeness by reconciling totals to the general ledger. I test accuracy by sampling entries and matching them back to source documents. This ensures reliability before using the reports in testing. While answering, always include extraction, completeness, and accuracy checks. How do you perform variance analysis as part of planning analytical procedures? Sample answer. I compare current year numbers with prior year, budgets, or industry averages. I investigate significant variances by reviewing supporting documents or business explanations. This helps identify areas needing deeper audit focus. While answering, always include comparisons, variance investigation, and insights. A difference arises between control totals and sample testing population. How do you investigate discrepancies? Sample answer. I recheck data extraction filters, time periods, and mapping. I compare system totals with client reports. If differences persist, I consult onshore about system nuances. Resolving discrepancies early prevents sample errors. While answering, always include rechecking, reconciliation, and clarification. How do you perform substantive testing for PPE additions and disposals? Sample answer. I select samples from additions and verify invoices, approvals, and capitalization criteria. For disposals, I verify sale documents and removal from the fixed asset register. I reconcile closing balances to the trial balance. This ensures existence and accuracy. While answering, always include sample checks, documents, and reconciliations. A client sends scanned PDFs. How do you validate authenticity and reliability of evidence? Sample answer. I check metadata, clarity, and consistency. I cross-verify numbers with system reports or independent sources. If the document looks altered or incomplete, I request original system extracts. Reliable evidence is essential for audit conclusions. While answering, always include verification, cross-checking, and escalation. How do you test journal entries using predefined risk-based criteria? Sample answer. I filter entries using risk logic, such as unusual accounts, odd timings, or high-value entries. I select samples and verify supporting documents. I check approvals, segregation of duties, and reasonableness. This targets risky areas efficiently. While answering, always include risk filters, sampling, and support checks. A control fails during testing. How do you document and evaluate impact on audit approach? Sample answer. I record the failure, attach evidence, and assess whether it is isolated or widespread. I communicate the failure to onshore immediately. Together, we decide if substantive testing must be increased. Clear documentation supports audit revisions. While answering, always include evidence, communication, and impact analysis. How do you perform bank confirmation and reconciliation procedures from offshore? Sample answer. I prepare confirmation requests and track responses. For reconciliations, I match bank statements to the ledger, identify timing differences, and investigate unreconciled items. I document all findings clearly. Accurate bank work reduces risk. While answering, always include confirmations, reconciliation, and investigation. A client has multi-location data. How do you consolidate audit evidence efficiently? Sample answer. I standardize templates so evidence from all locations looks the same. Then I compile the data into a consolidated file and cross-check totals. Consistent formats reduce errors and speed up review. While answering, always include standardization, consolidation, and verification. How do you review and validate actuarial reports for employee benefit expense? Sample answer. I verify assumptions like discount rate, salary growth, and attrition. I check whether opening balances match last year's data. I reconcile actuarial numbers to the financial statements. This ensures completeness and accuracy. While answering, always include assumptions, tie-outs, and validation. A complex spreadsheet is used by client. How do you assess spreadsheet controls and logic? Sample answer. I review formulas, dependencies, and hidden sheets. I test key calculations with manual checks. I verify whether the spreadsheet is locked or version controlled. This reduces risk of spreadsheet errors. While answering, always include logic review, manual checks, and controls. How do you perform impairment testing support for goodwill or fixed assets? Sample answer. I gather cash flow projections, discount rates, and assumptions from the client. I validate inputs, check mechanical accuracy, and recalculate key parts. If results indicate possible impairment, I highlight it to onshore. Proper support ensures audit reliability. While answering, always include input validation, recalculation, and support. A client has related party transactions. How do you verify completeness and disclosures? Sample answer. I check minutes, contracts, and ledgers for related party indicators. I match transactions to disclosures and ensure all required details are included. Any gaps are flagged to onshore for clarification. While answering, always include identification, matching, and disclosure verification. End. How do you prepare audit documentation for revenue cutoff testing? Sample answer. I select samples around period end and verify shipping documents, invoices, and delivery dates. I check whether revenue was recorded in the correct period. I document procedures, results, and conclusions for review. While answering, always include cutoff logic, sample checks, and documentation. A client changes accounting policies. How do you assess financial statement impact? Sample answer. I first understand the old policy and the new policy. Then I identify which accounts and disclosures will be affected. I compare prior year and current year numbers to measure the impact. I also verify whether retrospective adjustments are required. Clear documentation helps reviewers understand the change. While answering, always include policy comparison, impact analysis, and documentation. How do you test lease accounting under IFRS 16 or ASC 842 using offshore capabilities? Sample answer. I obtain lease contracts and extract key terms like lease term, payments, and discount rates. I verify whether the client calculated right-of-use assets and lease liabilities correctly. I recalculate schedules and check disclosures. Offshore teams can support all mechanical accuracy checks. While answering, always include contract review, recalculation, and disclosure checks. How do you assess accuracy of deferred tax calculations provided by onshore teams? Sample answer. I review temporary differences, applicable tax rates, and opening balances. I agree numbers to financial statements and validate the movement schedule. I reperform key calculations to ensure accuracy. This cross-check strengthens the audit evidence. While answering, always include tie-outs, recalculation, and validation. A control narrative is unclear. How do you update RACM and process flow diagrams? Sample answer. I speak with onshore to clarify control activities, frequency, and ownership. Then I update the risk and control matrix, ensuring risks match controls logically. I also update the flowchart so it reflects the real process. Updated documentation improves testing quality. While answering, always include clarification, updates, and alignment. How do you assist onshore teams in group audit consolidation procedures? Sample answer. I collect financials from components, validate currency conversions, and check eliminations. I ensure all intercompany balances are reconciled. I prepare consolidation schedules and tie them to group financials. This supports onshore during group reporting. While answering, always include validation, eliminations, and reconciliations. How do you test inventory valuation using cost-to-value reconciliation? Sample answer. I start with the inventory listing. I verify cost with purchase documents and compare it to net realizable value. If NRV is lower, I verify whether provisions were recorded. I document calculations clearly. This confirms valuation accuracy. While answering, always include cost checks, NRV checks, and provisions. A client reports foreign currency transactions. How do you verify translation and revaluation entries? Sample answer. I check whether the client used correct exchange rates for translation. I verify revaluation entries for year-end using spot rates. I match gains or losses to financial statements. Proper testing ensures accuracy in foreign currency areas. While answering, always include rate checks, revaluation, and tie-outs. How do you verify revenue recognition using contract testing procedures? Sample answer. I select customer contracts, review performance obligations, and billing terms. I verify whether revenue was recognized according to the rule, over time or at a point in time. I test actual invoices, deliveries, and schedules. Contract testing ensures compliance with standards. While answering, always include contract review, performance obligations, and testing evidence. A client has long outstanding receivables. How do you evaluate expected credit loss, ECL, model inputs? Sample answer. I review aging reports, historical loss rates, and customer risk categories. I check management assumptions, like probability of default and recovery rates. I recalculate the ECL model for selected customers. This validates the reliability of credit loss provisions. While answering, always include aging, assumptions, and recalculation. How do you perform cutoff testing for liabilities and accruals at year-end? Sample answer. I select expense samples just before and after year-end. I verify invoices, goods received notes, and approvals. I confirm whether expenses belong to the correct period. Proper cutoff ensures liabilities and expenses are stated correctly. While answering, always include sample checks, documents, and period logic. A client provides SOC 1 reports. How do you review and assess reliance on service organization controls? Sample answer. I check the scope, period, and testing results of the SOC 1 report. I review complementary user controls and ensure the client has implemented them. If exceptions appear, I evaluate whether additional audit procedures are needed. SOC reviews reduce audit risk. While answering, always include scope review, QECs, and exception analysis. How do you ensure version control and accuracy of audit work papers in shared audit tools? Sample answer. I use naming conventions, lock finalized work papers, and track revisions. I ensure all changes are supported and cross-referenced. I avoid duplicate files and maintain clean folders. Good version control helps reviewers navigate easily. While answering, always include naming rules, locking, and revision tracking. A client's data contains duplicates. How do you identify and cleanse duplicates for sample testing? Sample answer. I sort data by key fields like invoice number, date, or amount. I highlight entries that appear more than once. I validate duplicates with the client and remove incorrect entries. Clean data ensures reliable sample selection. While answering, always include sorting, detection, and validation. End. How do you test cash flow classification using supporting documents? Sample answer. I review transactions and trace them to bank statements or supporting schedules. I check whether entries were classified correctly as operating, investing, or financing flows. I test judgmental areas carefully. Correct classification improves financial statement quality. While answering, always include tracing, classification checks, and judgment review. A journal entry sample includes system-generated entries. How do you assess risk? Sample answer. I check whether the entry comes from a controlled system process. I review configuration, approval rules, and segregation of duties. If the system is stable and controls are strong, risk is lower. If not, I perform additional testing. While answering, always include system controls, approval logic, and additional testing. How do you prepare roll-forward schedules for recurring testing procedures? Sample answer. I update prior year balances with current year activity. I recalculate totals and verify movements using supporting documents. I ensure the ending balance matches the trial balance. Roll forwards help auditors understand year-on-year changes. While answering, always include updating, recalculation, and tie-outs. A client uses automated controls. How do you evaluate IT-dependent controls? Sample answer. I understand the system logic, then check inputs, processing, and outputs. I verify whether key reports are accurate and complete. If automation depends on IT controls, I check whether ITGCs, IT general controls, are effective. This supports reliance on automated controls. While answering, always include system logic, dependencies, and ITGCs. How do you use data analytics tools like Alteryx, ACL, or IDEA in offshore audit support? Sample answer. I use these tools to clean data, identify trends, and perform full population testing. I create workflows to detect unusual entries or duplicates. Analytics helps focus audit attention on high-risk transactions. Offshore teams can add significant value here. While answering, always include cleaning, trend analysis, and full population testing. All right. How do you document professional skepticism in offshore audit work? Sample answer. I'd highlight unusual patterns, inconsistencies, or contradictory evidence. I document questions raised and responses received. I also record additional procedures performed. This shows that the team challenged assumptions instead of accepting information blindly. While answering, always include questioning, evidence checks, and documentation. A client disputes audit findings. How do you escalate and document resolution? Sample answer. I present the evidence calmly and explain the logic behind the finding. If the dispute continues, I escalate to onshore with a summary of facts. I document all discussions, evidence, and conclusions. This ensures transparency and protects audit quality. While answering, always include evidence, escalation, and documentation. How do you reconcile manual versus system calculations for revenue or payroll testing? Sample answer. I reperform the calculation manually using source data. Then I compare it to system output and identify differences. If differences arise, I check system configuration and formulas. This confirms which number is reliable. While answering, always include manual recalculation, comparison, and investigation. A sample is missing supporting evidence. How do you handle exceptions and follow-up? Sample answer. I request missing evidence and give the client reasonable time. If not provided, I classify the item as an exception and document it. I notify onshore so they can follow up or adjust the audit opinion if needed. While answering, always include follow-up, classification, and documentation. How do you prepare financial statement tie-outs and disclosure checklists? Sample answer. I cross-check every number in the financial statements back to the trial balance or workpapers. I tick and tie notes, schedules, and disclosures. I complete the disclosure checklist to ensure compliance with accounting standards. This strengthens financial statement accuracy. While answering, always include tie-outs, ticking, and compliance checks. A team must collaborate with multiple onshore offices. How do you manage multi-country coordination? Sample answer. I maintain a central tracker for deadlines, PBCs, and responsibilities. I schedule structured calls and share consistent templates. I communicate updates proactively so all offices stay aligned. Good coordination prevents duplication and confusion. While answering, always include tracking, structured communication, and alignment. How do you present completed audit work, issues, and status updates during onshore review calls? Sample answer. I summarize the work performed, highlight key findings, and explain any issues clearly. I support my points with evidence and tie-outs. I also discuss next steps or pending items. A structured update helps reviewers close audits efficiently. While answering, always include clear summaries, logic, and next steps. Thank you for watching. And if you liked our video, kindly press the like button and leave us a comment. This will help us reach a wider audience. Don't forget to check the playlist for more great learning.